When I think about it, in our spirit, soul, and body, most of our lifetime, not just our secular environment and culture, that's not the only environment that instructs us to think of me being just these temporal senses, the temporal being, my temporal experience, the tangible physical experience. That's the me. That's what my secular culture teaches.
Yeah.
And sadly, even our religious or Christian culture, for the most part, rallies around that level. Now, we do, of course, believe in a spirit man, but we have not been taught to be cognizant, aware, in touch, to fellowship with our spirit man. We've not been taught to know what our spirit man's voice sounds like. We have a body that has a voice, and we call them our five senses. The voice of our body is our five senses. We're hungry, we're hot, we're cold, that type of thing. So our body feeds us info through its voice, namely and mostly our five senses. Our soul man has a voice, and we think of it in terms of emotions. I'm sad, glad, mad, tired, frustrated, deserve a break or a vacation. Those are voices coming from our soul man. We've been taught to live in that realm primarily. We have not been taught, I'll just say, very little of any sermons I've heard over my lifetime have been instructing me how to hear my spirit man's voice.
Yeah.
And if you and I are primarily a spirit man, which Paul Bell, I think you say that very well, the real me is my spirit man. It's the more real part of me than this part right here. My spirit man for sure is eternal, and as my faith grows, I may find my body also becoming eternal. Come on now, we're heading that direction. But it hasn't been in our wheelhouse of faith to believe for a body being eternal. And sadly, what that does then is it leaves us living from only the temporal realm. And the temporal realm then is decaying around us. Everything under the sun, even though there is sunlight coming and photosynthesis occurs and increase some level of light and vitamin D and different things that are life-giving, the sun is a very harmful thing because the rays create an aging effect. Everything under the sun will come to an end. Now this is where the fringe of our faith is, or mine, let me just say, until or unless we begin to transition to not being under the sun, but over the sun. That's Psalm 8. The psalmist says, and you've given man a charge over all the works of your hand, and that would of course include the sun. The sun is the work of his hand. Think of a couple. How about in that day you'll have no need for the sun or the moon, for the Lamb, the Lord himself, will be your light. Now, when we transition to that level, ascend to that place of reality, first it comes by revelation, by hearing, faith is awakened, and then it begins to call forth that which is not as though it was, and it begins then to build the building of faith, constructing with those building blocks of installments of revelation. Pretty soon then we can walk in the reality of what we've been hearing. So, my feeling is that our invitation from God is always, but especially in these days now, is for us to learn to live in the spirit realm versus primarily in the natural. Now, we'll still have our feet on the ground, I think. But our primary reality will come from learning to live in the spirit realm by our spirit. What does Romans 8:14 say? These are the sons of God, they which are led by the Spirit of God. So I'm wanting to learn to live by my spirit and from my spirit, listening to the voice of my spirit. Let's just unpack that just a little bit more and then we'll maybe wrap it up. So if our body has voice, namely our five senses, if our soul has a voice, namely emotions and maybe a few other things, then what is the voice of our spirit? What would our spirit man's voice sound like? How would we instruct somebody, starting at square one, how would we instruct them to be in touch with and become aware of the sound of their spirit voice? Now, if man can't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God, then this must be pretty doggone important to learn how to hear in the spirit realm, hear in our spirit man, and hear what our spirit man has to say. Well, I think in the beginning, that's kind of a far off subject. It's kind of a subject very hard to sink our teeth into or to get a grasp of it. But I think I want to start with something that most people experience. Now, let me back up just a second. Someone might say that the voice of our spirit is our conscience. And I think that's a good start. But then again, I do know that our conscience can get seared. And whereas this used to be the plumb line, straight up and down used to be the plumb line for what's true, right, acceptable, and the center line for my life. Pretty soon after violating that for a while, I'm saying that this is more acceptable and this is more right and this. So I get skewed, I get seared till who knows where that's going to go. So I'm not sure that a conscience only is the best voice to listen to in order to try to hear our spirit man. Maybe a good place to start, but I have another one. Most of us experience tears when we experience the presence of the Lord.
Yeah.
That certainly is, I think, I've only met one person that I know of for sure that's never experienced any tears in his whole life, and he's my age. And he's a good, solid believer. I don't understand that. I can hardly relate to that. But most of us experience tears when we experience the presence of the Lord. Think of our first time we got saved, and think of the first time when he just loved on us and he washed over so tenderly that we just melted into a little bucket of mush and the tears flowed. My feeling is that tears are one of the very best ways of identifying what my spirit man, or that my spirit man is trying to say something. Now, my tears don't necessarily tell me what my spirit man's saying, but tears do tell me that my spirit is talking to me. And why is it talking to me? Because God, his spirit, and my spirit have just bumped into each other, and there's this koinonia thing happening between his spirit and my spirit, and the long-standing desire from before time that was resident within my spirit that says, I want to be one with my God. I want to be one with my Father. It's beginning to happen again right now. And so there's this stirring. There's this deep calling to deep. There's this Abba cry that rises up rises up from the deepest places of our spirit man and says, this is what I've always longed for. This is what I was made for. And so what's my spirit man do? I think it tries to notify me. The other two parts of me, my soul and my body, it's trying to say, hey, Mark, listen up. Listen up. You haven't paid much attention to me. You've just made me kind of be relegated to the back porch of this whole experience. And you've made me kind of a theological acknowledgement is about all. But listen up, Mark. This is what I was made for. And listen up, Mark, if you want to thrive, if you really want to thrive, then stay engaged with what you're experiencing right now. Let me say it this way. If you and I want to stay alive spiritually, want to thrive, and want to have the most vibrant, verdant experience ongoing in our life, then stay in whatever environment makes you have those tears. Because why? That's where the synergism, the koinonia, the oneness of Father's Spirit and my spirit are most intermingled. As Justin Paul Abraham would say, as we're most entangled. I'm going to talk myself right into encounter if I'm not careful. Oh my. And that's what Father's Spirit longs for. And that's what our spirit longs for, is to be entangled, to be intermingled until there's a oneness that hopefully one day will never be unentangled, extricated from one another. We'll never be apart from one another. And I believe that longing is not only resident in our Father's heart, in the Spirit of God, but it's resident in us, even if we maybe haven't been cognizant of it heretofore. But when we find, whether that's by design and we go on a hunt, or we're in pursuit and we find him, or whether that's just by bebopping through life until one day we just find ourselves, oh my goodness, I'm in this oneness experience. In either case, it behooves us to take strong note, to take duly note that this is the environment that I need to have to stay fully alive with my God. That's where the unhindered, I believe, I just speak from my own experience, and I'm sure you guys concur, but that's where the unhindered flow is most awakened and is most empowered, so that the presence and power and the life of God can flow into the depths of my spirit man, not only activating my spirit man, but then bubbling out into my soul man and into my body, rejuvenating, renewing me in every way. The biblical word is regeneration. We get regenerated. Now, my feeling is that as that becomes more and more a reality to us, becomes more and more consistent, and we find ourselves living not in and from our body and soul so much, but we find ourselves living from our spirit man, I do believe with all my heart that that is one of the keys, I think maybe a primary key, for us then to begin to learn to live above the sun instead of under the sun. In other words, one of the keys to living not just a long life, but actually activating many passages through the gospel where Jesus said, if you believe in me, you will never die. If you believe in me, you shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And so I just believe one of the keys for us is to activate, to press in, to cultivate this ability for us to have this oneness of God, to where, first of all, it's manifest by and through the tears. As we grow in this, I think we'll begin to then become aware of the accompanying still small voice that comes from where? Not from our body now, not from our soul now, but from our spirit man. Oh, oh, I just feel the longing of God that He's just yearning for us to come into that place of reality so that it's not just a sometimes occurrence, but it becomes more and more an ongoing reality for us. Yes, we're going to continue to have earthly experience because we have people to take care of and bills to pay and things like that, houses to fix. But more and more our reality is now transitioned over into the spirit man realm. And I think, as I said, not only does that enhance the ability to receive the spirit life from the Spirit of God, but it opens up major, major doors for us to have a spirit life of travel, spirit life in the heavenlies, with the heavenly beings, the communities of heaven, and the government of heaven. And, anyway. So, well, I didn't know I was going there to that depth, but that kind of surprised me. It's just pleasant when you talk about the precious things. You talk about the gold that God's beginning to establish in your revelatory compartments of your heart, and you pull them out and you kind of look at them again and like, oh my, that's looking pretty good. And pretty soon you get to revisit the experience again. So thank the Lord for that.